Hey, welcome back to the channel where today you find me testing a Jaguar F-Pace SVR, which on the face of it doesn't look too different from the last one, but there are an awful lot of detail changes which I'll pull over and run you through in a moment. But the F-Pace SVR is a 5-litre V8 supercharged, predominantly rear drive platformed, largely aluminium mid-size SUV. Rivals something like mid-size in the UK, quite small in the US. It rivals things like Porsche Macan Turbo, Alfa Stelvio, and the Mercedes GLC 63 AMG. None of those has an engine quite as big as this. None of them has a supercharger. And I've often thought that the Jaguar really flies slightly under the radar compared to some of those cars, AMGs in particular. But anyway, what I'll do is I'll pull over, run you through the detail changes outside, run you through some of the interior changes, because actually some of those are very useful indeed, and then talk you through what it's like to drive. Well, it's a pretty windy day, but let me see if I can talk you through some of the detail changes that Jaguar has made to this car, subtle as they look from the outside. So first, you may note that this bonnet comes all the way down to the front. Previously, I think there was a shut line across here, so it's much tidier, and that has allowed larger vents. Jaguar's keen to stress that they are all real. They all do something. So even these ones on top of the bonnet actually let out hot air and reduce pressure under the hood, which contributes to a drag coefficient reduction from like 0.37 CD to 0.36, which is not huge, but it all counts. These vents here allow pressure out from under the wheel arch, which reduces front lift by 35%. And while I'm here, those are the 22-inch rims, and they are running Pirelli P0 tyres, which is the tyre it has been optimised for. You can also get all seasons and 21s on both, but 22s on P0s, if you want the best one to drive, is what to go for. Under here, while I'm here, those little 3 vents there just clean up turbulence along the side of the car, as does an array each side at the back, those 3 there. And although there is no actual outlet on that, what it does is, if you come around here, it just increases the width at the side. It helps clean the air off to reduce turbulence. The other thing that is real are these 4 actual genuine tailpipes. They all emit a V80 quite pleasant noise. Right, while we're here, it is probably also worth talking you through some of the interior changes. So you get 2 round dials, which I like. Although they're digital, I like the fact that they're round, because round dials are underrated. But the big news comes with the adoption of an electrical architecture, which all comes from Jaguar's EV platforms. Now, that's a bit weird because this is an internally combusted car, but the architecture that comes from the EV platform means that this touchscreen is really quick to respond in a way that JLR touchscreens have not been before, and it's actually genuinely very good. I've been using it instead of CarPlay, that's how good it is. So if you do want to change the dynamic modes, there's your gear lever, you pull it back. What you used to do with Jaguar levers is pull them to one side and then you could go up and down. Well, this, you just have to go back to S and then you do any pulling up and down solely on the levers. But you can change the dynamic modes via this toggle switch here, which just selects between them. But if you want to optimize the dynamic mode, like that, you can just go through and select very easily from 2 different settings on 4 different things, which is much better than some alternatives like an AMG, which gives you just an array of like 6 buttons and then there's 3 or 4 things to choose from each. This is much more straightforward, and I think all the better for it, I genuinely do believe. So you can choose from, I think it appears up here, I may have to start it first. It sounds rather good, doesn't it? So if I want the exhaust on, I have to select that before I start. It defaults to a quiet start, which is good. So that's dynamic mode, that's comfort mode, and the switch between the 2 is very easy. In comfort mode, there is like a 30-70 front to rear split of power as standard. In dynamic mode, that is more like 90-10. And if you're in rain or snow or ice mode, it starts at 50-50. But in all of those modes, it shuffles power around as it sees fit, but it will never put any more than 50% to the front. There's an 8-speed automatic gearbox. There is a centre differential, and then there is an ELSD, a locking differential at the back, which is electronically controlled. And that makes this car, the idea is, feel more sporty and more able to turn, and then when you get back on the power, it sort of straightens its line. Well, that's the theory. Let's find out. Right, so those are the details. What I should point out is that today I am driving from very near where Jaguar Land Rover makes and develops these cars. I can see their workshops from where I picked it up this morning. So if it doesn't feel good here, it won't feel as good anywhere. It should feel really good on these roads, and to its credit, it does. This is a big car, it's a heavy car, so it's 2.1 tons. It's got 22-inch rims with those P0 tyres. It's a tall car, it's a heavy car, and to try and make it do all of those things, I always think this is one of the hardest areas of the market to operate in, because you've got to get a car that is developed to be tall, like a tow car, like a 4x4, and try and make it a good driver's car. Those things are not necessarily easily compatible with each other, and I sometimes think, well, why would you bother? Why don't you just make a really good sports car here and let an SUV be an SUV? But I guess they kind of do that with the F-Type and the Defender, but we're picky and we want the best of both worlds. So here we are in a car that is comfortable, really good driving position, actually really good seats. Jaguar don't always get seats spot on, but these are, I think, really good. I've got fairly decent visibility, and on a rather sort of knobbly rough road surface, noise isolation is pretty good. I'm in the comfort mode at the moment, which is very easily changed actually, which I've got to say I like a lot. On the 2 stages of the dampers, it's just in comfort. The steering is just in comfort. Everything is in mooch mode. There's still an underlying sort of fidget to it, but it's much improved to how it was before, and I think it probably has better isolation than most of the competition. It'd be nice to get a back-to-back test. We'll do that at some point. So here, cruising at 60, which is as fast as I'm allowed to go. The engine's spinning over at 1500 revs. Things are relaxed. The steering is light, but has got a certain responsiveness just off straight ahead. It's one of the things that Jaguar does pretty well actually. Stelvio steers really quickly. Porsche steers with a lot of straight line stability, because Porsches develop a lot of cars on autobahns, and the Germans like a straight. If you speak to German engineers, they go, yeah. I think if we didn't have autobahns, we wouldn't develop cars to have such self-centering straight line stability. This is developed on weird flowing roads that are unique to the UK, so as a result it has very precise steering with nice build-up of weight and feel off of straight ahead. It's a really nice rack if you're in conditions like this. It's quite easy to take control of the gears yourself, and that engine sounds really good. It's now allowed to make its full complement of torque in all gears, which is 700 Newton meters. What's that in pounds-foot? It's about 550, something like that. It'll be in the spec, which will be on the screen at some point during this vid. That wasn't the case with the old F-Pace SVR, because it had its torque limited in lower gears. Now, because this runs the torque converter from Jaguar's Project 8, which is the really fast XE, it now can make its torque in all gears, which is why the 0 to 60 time has fallen from the other side of 4 seconds to like 3.8, which is just bonkers. There isn't a launch control, but you just sort of take up the slack by coming on the brake, easing on the accelerator, and then letting it go. I won't have the opportunity to do that on roads like this. What I can assess today is the ride and handling, and what I like about Jaguar, what they get right, is the fact that it has 2 drive modes, right? In terms of vehicle dynamics, in terms of normal driving, there are more than 2 drive modes, because this being that kind of car, there's an eco and there's like a snow, rain, and so on and so forth. But there are 2 main driving modes, one of which is dynamic, one of which is comfort, and it is as easy as going on that switch to flick between the 2. It's just one flick between the 2. And today I've been driving around and I've flicked between comfort and dynamic a lot on the same stretch of road. Dynamic isn't set so far over here that you'd only want to use it on a billiard smooth racetrack, and comfort isn't so far over here that it floats and everything else. They're very subtle engineer rather than marketing leg differences. So the other day I drove a Volkswagen Golf GTI Club Sport, and there were, when you go into select your damper modes, there's a couple of damper modes, but then if you want to select them yourself, there were 15 different levels of damper setting. Who needs 15? I mean, I wouldn't I'm not a vehicle dynamics engineer. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's good to have the choice of 15, but by the time I'd selected it for the precise road I was on, chances are I'd be off it. This is great. You want a bit of comfort, you just stick it in comfort. You want it back into dynamic, you just slip it back in dynamic. Just really clever stuff. Really simple stuff, actually. Not clever stuff, really simple stuff. And in either of those modes, it's really good. It's really engaging, it's entertaining, it steers really nicely with ease, but with feel and linearity, and it's just really great. The brake pedal is good, brake pedal feel is good. There's a little initial bite and then it firms up very quickly so you can really lean on it. It's a car made for people, by people who like driving. Which leaves two things. If you really liked driving, would you choose a 2.1 tonne SUV to go driving in? I mean, people do, don't they? People do. You can't get away from it. Of course, a sports car would be nicer, a low car would be nicer. People like the tallness, they like the ease of sliding in and out. They have a dog to take around, but they still want to enjoy it. Okay, I guess I get it. For a 2.1 tonne SUV, this is really good to drive. But bear in mind, that is for a 2.1 tonne SUV. Second thing, Jaguar recently announced the fact that it is going to become an all-electric brand in the not too distant future, which, good for it. It probably needs it. It's struggling to gain much sales traction as in the form it's in, needs a reinvention as a sporting, luxurious electric brand with cars that have a lot of character. I think that makes a lot of sense. Where does that leave SVO and the fact that it is the only car in this sector, it's the only car in so many sectors, to have a 5-litre supercharged V8? Where do you go with that long term? How do you get that SVR character into an electric vehicle? I guess, though, that is a question for another day. And in the meantime, you might as well enjoy the fact that, yes, there is a 2.1 tonne SUV out there that is really pleasant to drive and has all the character of a 5-litre supercharged V8.